Well, welcome to another video from me, Richard. Hopefully it'll be interesting. It's probably going to be a couple of hours total, but I'll try not to make it too boring. Okay, what we've got here is my LGB 2062, the 060 diesel. I just bought it from Germany and it's almost as new condition. I think it's got it on eBay, about $400, but this is 1990 version, roughly, somewhere between 98 and 93, 88 and 93. So there's lights, two lights, but no sound, no smoke, and so that's something I'm going to rectify. So it's all pretty good condition. It's hardly used. The skates are just about brand new. So we'll have a look at it on the track and let's see what's happening, and I'll just put it on DC for the moment, and we'll see that, and then we'll have a look what we're going to do and start opening it up. Okay, it's on the test track with DC power. So it's running all right. It's got the headlight runs. And the tail light on the back. So I'll turn around so you can see it. That's about all there is to see. So it's running fairly smoothly. I'll put a bit of grease on it when I get inside. But the other thing I want to do is just to check the amperage used. Okay, we're set up. I've got the multimeter set on 10 amps, and we've got the amperage running through that. So the important one is to test the stall speed. So get the loco running, full power on the controller, and then we push down on the wheels on the body till it stalls. About 2.3 amps. Same in reverse. 220 anyway, 2.2 amps. So we know the decoder, the ESU L decoder version 5L, takes about 3-4 amps, I think, so it should be no problem running everything. Alright, now we'll have a look inside. Okay, one tip before I started this is to get the service document from LGB. I got off the Trainlee website. So this document's got the diagrams, exploded diagrams of the engine. This has got 2620 and 2630. You just have to ignore the pages with 2630 written on them. Okay, so it helps me know where the screws are to assemble and disassemble. There's also this document, which is called the user guide. The only one I can find is 22620 user guide, which is the version with MTS written, built in. So not so much use, but some of the things are obviously the same about servicing and things like that. So useful to have that document. Alright. So yeah, I wanted to, a couple of things I want to do. I'll put some side lights on the back here. I want to put another fireman in, and or a second crew member, and perhaps a third guy who's going to be the shunter. So he's riding in the cab at the moment. So it's quite nice. The doors open here, spring loaded. So side lights on the front, and they can change colour, and red, white, and flashlight dish lights, perhaps in shunting mode. But the main thing is I'm going to put a speaker in, and the decoder, and a smoke generator. That's not a steam engine, of course, but some of the old diesels make quite a bit of smoke, so I'm going to put a smoke generator in there, turn the chuffs off, and I'll have to put some sort of chimney or a vent in the roof of the engine cover. So that's that. I'm going to put a hook on the front, and this fitting here I can see now, it's just a matter of adding the spring and the hook, it's all the same. Not sure about these handrails. I'll paint them black as a minimum, and I'm not sure about this one. It's a bit like a release for the coupling, but I think it's supposed to be a handrail, but it looks a bit odd to me. But anyway, that's about it. So let's start getting into it. So, as usual, there's all the screws are underneath. I'll just zoom in a bit. So we've got here, as far as I can see, well, you can undo that screw right at the rear. There's 5 screws in the bottom of the motor block. So the rearmost one and the second from the front, you can undo those and pull the motor block out of the bottom of the engine. But which, if you want to service inside, that's the best way to do it. Although if you take that cover off, you can get a lot of the internals in there. But I'm more interested in taking the body off rather than pulling the motor block out the bottom. So I'm going to proceed with that. So some things, like if you're doing it that way, the couplings and that can stay on. But most of these fittings, like the handle footsteps here, and these tanks, and this thing here, which is, I guess it's supposed to be a bell, things like that, they screw through this deck into the top deck, and so they all need to come out so we can separate the deck up from the chassis. So the first one is this little step, just with one screw, same as the one at the back. They're just crosshead self-tapping screws, so be careful with those when we come to reassemble. There's a lot more commonality in this engine than previous ones. Many of the screws are the same, so you don't have to quite keep track of all the screws according to which hole they came out of. Okay, so you don't want to lose them. Okay, so basically that's it on this side. you can see these little bit of blue plastic poking through here. So that's the body coming down. So that's why I have to get those off. So I'll just turn it over and do the other side. We'll see where. Okay, so I've done those small items on both sides. So there's 1, 2, 3, 7 of those. And now I'll take out these other screws. So there's 5 of them along the bottom there. And I've marked these ones black because they can stay in to keep the bottom of the motor block on. These 2 are the ones which I haven't marked. The second one from the front and the rearmost, they go right through up into the body. So we'll need those out. Now you may think I'm quite confident doing this, but I'll have to admit I spent quite a lot of time studying the diagram and then trying it out. So you're gaining the benefit of that. So those 2 screws are out. Now I think should come out. You've got these handlebars. They fit in little clips on the top of the foot plate there. So they just pop out from there. Hopefully they'll come out. But you can see it's moving. Make sure that those handrails are out. Not sticking still in that one at the back. There we go. You can take these panels off, like the buffer beams front and rear with 2 screws there, but I'm going to try and not do that. So now it should be coming up. Right, that comes up. And just like that, change the view. And the whole body lifts up. And so underneath there we can see the 3 wires from the motor block go up into the body. There's a little electronics board under there. I'm not sure what it does, not much. So there's 2 wires to the headlight, and there's another wire goes up the back, and which you can see from, if we take this plate off, you can see the wires to the rear headlight and the power socket and the cab light. And that's all the wiring. So not a lot to it, which means it shouldn't be a big problem to change it. So what we do have to do is insulate the wires to get a 4-wire connection to the motor block, and get some space inside and see what's how much room there is inside. And that was my first need to get the engine on. So disconnect those wires, they just pull off. And now there's 4 screws in here holding this black plate, foot plate, I call it, onto the bottom of the body. So there's one there on the outside at the forward end on the outside, and one here on the inside of this moulding, and the same on that side. So we just got to get those out. got a magnetic screwdriver, so it's pretty useful to get those out. Right, I'll just do the other 4. Okay, so I've undone those 4 screws, and this panel just comes off now, providing you've kept these handrails out. And once you've done that, these sometimes tend to slide down like that. So, but I'm not quite sure how you would take them out. That's the 2 pins which go through, one there and one here, and they go through down into the bottom of the motor block. So that's the other end of those 2 screws we took out. At the motor block, that's quite loose now. That would pull out, and so be aware of that. You can see the 2 lead weights. They're about, well, you can see the size of them. They're about 2 centimeters thick, and that's all the ballast for the loco. So that's there under the floor. So it's a little bit in the way, but it's not as bad as having it all stuck in the engine compartment. So we've got quite a lot of room. So you can see here the interior of this, where the engine would be, is basically empty. There's nothing in there. That's about 50mm by 50mm and 125 long, so quite a bit of room. Although of course the speakers and the smoke unit and the decoder have got to go in there. And if I'm going to operate the couplings, then there'll be a servo in there for the front coupling, but I think should fit. You can see that little circuit board there, and it's got the switch in the cabin, which we don't really need with DCC. So this can come out, and we'll redo the wires. Now, there's another 4 screws to take the cab roof off. There's 2 at the back and 2 at the front of the cab roof, which we'll have to do at some point, but the main thing was to get this out and see where we're going. Well, that's it for now. What I am going to do now is start converting the motor block to a 4-wire, which doesn't take long. Take the top off and basically just insulate the motor pins and draw the wires out. So I'll start that now. Okay, so we're starting on that. Now what I will do, seeing it's quite simple now, the motor block is not attached to the chassis anymore. It's only got 2 screws which go up into the body, which hold that together. So I'll take that chassis off. I'm going to paint that pretty much all black later, because it looks rather circus showroom condition here in the red. So I'll paint all that black and leave the counterweights in red, and you'll really see them moving, and that's more like what happens in real practice. Anyway, we'll take this cover off the top of the motor block now. So 2 screws. Again, seem to be all the same. Unlike the Steins, which has got all different sorts of screws. So that just comes off. Now the 3 pins, they just go through holes there, so that just slides off. Okay, so there's the inside of the motor block. So you've got the motor and the 2 worms and the driving on the gears down to the front and rear axles, and the center axle is connected via the rods. And on this side we've got the two skates and the wheels. Each of those has a brush which runs on the back of the wheels. We'll see that in a minute. Well, I'll show you that now, just for interest's sake. I hope we don't have to do anything in there, though I probably will do some lubrication. So this is the other screw, 3 screws in the bottom of the motor block. You can undo this without taking the motor out, so if you want to just get in there, you can do that. And in fact you could undo these 5 screws and take the motor block out of the engine without taking the cab off and all that, if you just want to service the motor block. Okay, so they're all off, so that comes out, and we're left with the all the innards. Now be careful now, because once you've undone that, all these axles could lift out. In fact, if you do that, then the brushes poke out. You won't lose the brushes because they're the captive ones, but then you'll have to poke them all back in again. These little metal strips go in there, and they help to connect the bits, the brushes, the rear and the skates and the centre brushes and the front brushes. So they're all joined by those wires, and the pins, little pins inside the cover, push down on those. So you've got to be pretty accurate with that. Alright, I just mentioned there's a spring down there, fine spring. That's insulated from everything because it does connect both sides, and it provides the springing for the centre axle, but it's not electrically attached to anything, so don't let anything touch that. Now I will have to do something because there's a lot of grease in here. There's the camera lens there. A little bit thick to be greasy, so I'll have to clean that up a little bit. Bit of fresh grease in there, but we don't have to go into that to look at the motor block. So we'll put that back on, and it goes around. Which end's it going? That way. Yep. You can tell because that little cutout goes where the skates are. So that's back on. Of course, go anti-clockwise until it clicks, and then clockwise, so we don't bugger up the threads. You might be able to just hear it click there. Last one. And then you go clockwise. Okay, so that's underneath. So that's the recommended method, is to take the motor out, remembering which way around it goes. There's a little pin on here, if you can see it, the little pin sticks out, and there's not one on the back, and that pin goes into there, in a little slot in the top of the motor cover. So as is common, this motor cover is critical to keeping the motor in position. So what do we need to do to insulate the motor from the rest of the the power coming in, the track power. So the track power and the motor power has to be fully insulated from the decoder and all the lighting for DCC. So what I'll do now is I've just bent those two pins. I'm not sure if you can see them very easily. There we go, just see them there, the two brass pins, one on each side, and they contact those two pins, the inner and outer pin where the wiring connects it. So I've bent those in out of the way so they won't contact that pin anymore. I'll solder an orange and grey wire on there and insulate it with some shrink wrap over that, so when it goes back in we're independent of the existing wiring inside the motor. Okay, that's it for now. I'll do this bit of soldering and get back to you. Okay, well, after a considerable amount of fiddling and thinking, I have isolated the wires and converted to 4-pin motor block. So what we've got here is the motor block, the motor, with the 2 pins at the front, which previously contacted the outer pins coming up from the interior of the motor block. So normally the procedure is to bend them out of the way of the pins and then solder wires on and insulate them. But I found that the spot where the pins go is quite tight, and with the extra thickness there, possibly it wouldn't go down into the right position because of the extra thickness, because the pins actually fit into a slot here, and just, can you see that there? Yeah, there's a slot there and a slot there next to the pins. So so I decided to leave it straight and see if it came out through the slots correctly, and that ended up working. Also, I've got the orange wire, which is normally the plus and connects to the right hand side, but I've got that on the left because, like all LGB locomotives, they're wired up to, well, the motors are set to run in reverse when you apply positive power to the right rail, which is NRMA standard. So NRMA standard is positive on the right rail, the motor runs forwards. So I try to keep to that, and so I've got the right rail connected to the black terminal, which is on the left hand side of facing forwards. So that's around the opposite way to what you might think. Sorry, I'm talking about it and not showing it on the screen. So the black side, which is the left hand side of the motor, I've connected to the orange wire, which normally is motor plus, connected to the right hand side. Sorry, motor plus is the right hand side, right hand track, but on this motor it's the left hand side of the motor, so that's why that's there. Now the other thing then is the track power, which comes up through the 2 pins here. There was the 3rd pin, but I've taken that out through the bottom. I'll show you that after. The 2 pins come up there, and they used to contact the terminals on the motor. So I've cut a little bit off them and moved them out of the way, so the motor pins can go in there, and I've put some shrink wrap on them, which I haven't done. I'll do that, and then they'll be able to go in. So I better just put that shrink wrap on, and then we'll insert the motor in and we'll see how it goes. Okay, that's done now. So we've got the motor, so that goes down. So the insulated motor terminals fit in that slot. It's quite solid. It's engaging with the gears. So that's in, and the track terminals are there in there too. Let's come a bit of an angle. Move that back. Okay. So last bit is just to lead the terminals through, lead the wires through. So there was only 3 holes in there originally, so I've drilled an extra hole. The wires could come out through a number of the holes. Through here or here, but you've got to lead them up through the motor. They can't come past the motor. And equally, these holes here are covered up by the black floor frame, so I won't use them. I'll use these holes, and because that comes up through the floor into the engine compartment. So that would make it a little bit easier later on, hopefully. So now if I put the red and the orange together, just twist them. I've tested with the multimeter, so the pins are connected to the track power and the all the wheels on one side and the skate on that side, and the other wires connects to the continuous with all the wheels and the skate on the other side, and insulated from the motor. So we should be able to put it on the track. And so we're on the track. The black and grey wire are joined, and the red and the orange, and we've got DC power. So that's working. So I have to let it run in. Make sure it's running smoothly. Seems to be a little bit there's something not right with that front axle. So I'll have a look at that. But the motor block is converted to 4-wire, and we can continue the DCC installation. In the last episode, we had the motor block in, and we're testing it on DC, and it was running a little bit bumpy, as if one axle was not running smoothly or true. And so I took the cover off and checked all the cogs again, make sure there's not a missing tooth or something. I experimented a couple of times, making sure all the axles were in alignment with the same degree of angle, and the opposite side was 90 degrees different, but they're all the same. I did skip the cog, one pin on the cog, one tooth on the cog at one end, just to bring it a little bit closer. Checked all the bearings, make sure everything was greased. I put a bit of conducting grease on the brushes and normal grease on the axles, and on the behind the con rods. it seemed that the conrod is might be having an effect, because the centre axle doesn't have any movement apart from via the conrod on each side. So as the rod goes around, it's sort of pushing up or down on that axle. When it's off the ground, it's more pronounced. When it's on the track, it seems to run alright. So everything's all greased. I let it run for an hour at medium speed, and it's a lot better. So we'll see how that goes. I did get one other thing done off the list. Not a big job, but I did get the new hook on the front. So the front normally comes without a hook, but I think there should be a hook, particularly for shunting locos. If the wagon that you're trying to shunt doesn't have a hook, then you're in a bit of strife. On the list of things to be done is to remove the PCB here, so it's just going to be in the way, and get ready for the wiring. So just doing that now. There's 4 screws to take the cab roof off, one in each corner, and I've done 3. I've just got the last one to do. Quite hard to see in there, so they're well hidden away. So again, 4 self-tapping screws, though these are much smaller than the other ones that we've been dealing with. Okay, so yeah, quite a bit smaller. See them there. Very handy to have magnetic screwdriver. Alright, so cab roof then comes off. So as I said there, quite a bit of room for a speaker. If you want to do that, you can get a shallow one, but I'm going to use the space in the boiler, I think. So I'll put that to one side. Right, now we can see in the cab now. So you can see there on the bottom, there's the, I presume we've got enough light. You've got a round fitting or a feature on the bottom of the cab there, and that's got the switch. I can take that switch out and just put something else over it if I want to leave that fitting there. I suppose it's supposed to look like the transmission in the cab or something like that. But that can stay there. You do have the so here is the it's just a plastic fitting. It's the back of the I was going to say the boiler, but it's not the boiler, but the firewall with its handle, cab light, and there's the dashboard, very detailed. I put a touch of paint on those dials and a bit of weathering there, a bit of black and grey, and so on, so that can go back in. The light, the wire which runs the cab light is there, the black and white one, and the that's the wiring to the rear headlight that goes up behind that black panel and presumably under the floor through there. Yep. So I'll work out how to take now. Now while seeing I've got that out, I can, the engine cover can come out, but you've got these handrails go through, they're metal, and they're secured behind the this plastic, which is the glass. So I'm not sure about taking them out. Can I take the boiler off without taking the handrails off, or do I want to do that? I suppose that if I take the glass out, which is all one piece, then those handrails would come out and the engine would come off. But let me have an experiment. So yes, that did work. There's two lugs on the back of the cover here which go through the cab wall, and if you just lift them up, there's just enough clearance to lift up, they release those lugs, and then you can pull the engine cover off, leaving these handrails in place, which would come out if you took the plastic out. I don't need to, so I won't. Hopefully those won't get in the way. So we've got that open now. Oh, it's just popped out. Oh yes, I suppose the interior end is not very long, so you, by judicious wiggling, that comes out. Okay, that is going to make it easier to work with. Yes, so these are going to be painted black. I mean, it's a shunting locomotive. I don't think it needs gold-plated fittings, so they'll come later. Okay, now we've got the headlight. I'm going to try and save the wiring. I'm not sure where the yes, that should just probably come straight out here. Right, that's the headlight off, and the light, it's going to push down through there. I think it's a bit. No, comes out that way. Right. Okay, I'm going to reuse that headlight because it does give a nice warm headlight look. Not a LED modern spotlight look. So I'll cut that wire. And the other half can go with the board. Now, if it was an LED, you'd make note of which wire is which, but I'm assuming it's incandescent and it'll go wire up either way around. Okay. Now we'll see about getting this board out from underneath this cover. Okay, well, I've undone the two little screws on either side of the switch handle, and I'm now going to see if this comes out, this board. It looks as though it will come out. You've got the switch on the other end. Perhaps that's just a bit of a push on the switch itself. There we go. So that's out there. And the other end is the cab light. Probably going to push out. No, not moving. Alright. and cut that off. I'll cut that off as well, and that will then extend down to the decoder. Yeah, and then we've got the 3 wires at the back. Again, do I want to 2 will be lead to the power socket and 2 will lead to the light. Well, one's common, probably the brown, but I can work that out. Do I want to change all that wiring, rewire that all? Probably not. There is a panel there which could come out, although that would be impacting the doors and the springs. So maybe leave all that. I can just wire onto that there. So I'm going to cut that off as well, and I'll work out which wire's which and label them. Then I can put this switch little board on eBay. I get 10 or 20 bucks for it. Okay, well that's done. The little board out of the bottom, 3 wires at the back. I've labelled them. The green wire is to the power socket on the back of the cab, the white wire to the rear headlight, and the brown wire is the common, which provides with the other 2 wires. So I've labelled those and made a note, so I can put that away, sell that later. The wires there are now terminated at the back. Strip the wires a bit. I can solder some longer wires on there to lead to the decoder, and I'll probably put a little pin and socket on there so I can disconnect and take the wires out of the cab, take the cab off, and same with the headlight. Well, just a quick update. Had a bit of time yesterday, so I painted the underframe black on both sides. It's a mixture of flat and satin, streaky. I'll touch it up a little bit further. It's supposed to indicate dirt and oil. Leaving the counterweights red, which I've seen in a few engines, so we'll see how that looks. Just a little bit of weathering on there perhaps, and some lines on those side rods, but that's looking pretty good. I didn't paint the whole thing, just the sides where they're going to be exposed. That'll all be undercover. Also gave this figure a little bit of weathering and yeah, just some weathering to show up the pattern in the clothes rather than the grey that it comes with. So he's a driver, but or engineer, but I think he'll be okay standing at the back of the cab like a shunter or crewman, just a crewman, and see how that goes. Now, sitting figure for the other engineer. Haven't got any other sitting figures on hand except this one. I didn't want to pay 30 or 40 bucks to have one posted from overseas, so I'll use this guy. I'll cut off his rucksack and his lunchbox, and give him a coat of grey and touch up his face. I did it pretty roughly last time. His eyes are a bit wonky. So I'm not sure about giving him a hat or just painting a few strands of hair on his head so he looks like me. I'm not sure. We'll see how we go. I'll give you an update on that. I have painted his shoes, so they're now black, so he's on the way. Okay, I'll do a bit more. Talk to you later. Hi, back again. It's been a couple of weeks probably since I last updated, but I've been doing quite a bit of small jobs and jobs which have taken quite a bit of thinking, but I'll show you progress so far. So the body here and the chassis and so forth is pretty much as it was in the last update. I've put the little 4-pin plug on the wires from the motor here, and so that means that I can take everything off, including the decoder, and leaving the motor block there. Or I can take the motor block out and leave everything else in place. The big part that's been taking time is making the speaker box. So I'll just bring that into view. So I'll pull it out from where it is now, inside the motor. So these are the speakers that I bought. The large ones 45mm and the small ones 32mm. So I couldn't fit two of the large ones in, so I've got one large and one small. This goes down to 90 Hertz, frequency response, so I should get a good bass from that. And this one just is a full range speaker, though a smaller one, and that'll help fill in the power. With the ESU5, there's two independent circuits from which will drive from 4 to 16 ohms, so it doesn't matter which. You don't have to worry about matching the impedance or anything, because they'll be on separate channels. They're playing the same sounds. Little box, it's just a plastic box from J-Car. I had to cut it, which is a bit of a mess, but it works. It's all sealed up pretty well, airtight. Put a perspex cover on, then I can cut the holes and fit the speakers. It's all fine as long as they're in the plus and minus is the same on each speaker. So from the speaker box I've got the wires coming out, sealed in the hole, and I've got the two different coloured wires on the two speakers, so I can trace them, and positive and negative of using the black stripe on the wire. So that goes to another 4-pin plug, so I can again take the speakers out, or I can take the engine cover off and disconnect the speakers. So that's there. Now the body, or the engine cover as I call it, it's quite a tight fit. It's exactly 50mm inside, but you've got these plastic fittings here which the screws run into, and that they run all the way down to the bottom, but the screws are only about 1 centimetre long, so I've cut the shaft off inside there, cut that moulding away, and gives me a lot of space inside, a bit wider space inside, so that the speaker box can fit in there. And then I've just put some double-sided tape underneath, and that goes in there and sits in there quite satisfactorily. Another thing I had to do with installing the sound was to improve where the sound comes out
So what I've done is drill those rows of holes in the black footplate. So they're positioned there so that they're inside the engine compartment on the top, but underneath the holes come out between the motor block and the chassis, the outside of the chassis. So you can't see them from the outside or on the footplate, but the sound from the speakers comes straight down through there onto the track, and you get good sound out of there.
The other step I've done is to start wiring the decoder. So again, it's got the adapter board on the bottom. That's the decoder on top. All the soldering's done on the adapter board underneath. So I've put a few lights. So that's for the motor. 4-pin plug goes to the motor. 4-pin plug goes to the speakers, and I've done half the wiring. So those wires go to the rear headlights and the cab light, and these two wires are the headlight, for the headlight. Now the other functions, the ditch lights, will go in the spare pins when I wire them up. So I've actually tried it out, and once I got to this point, tried it out. So I'll show you how that goes. So the decoder's on there. It's just got some double-sided tape underneath holding it in position there in the centre, and then to fit that, do some of these plugs. So this one's for the speakers. Just goes in. Just make sure the blue tack's holding. Yeah, that's the speakers. This one is for the headlight. Each one's numbered, so when you put them back together, colour paint might do the job as well, but when they put them back together, you get the right ones. This one's for the motor block. So that's there, and that just sits in position there. It doesn't need to be all screwed in. I'm just putting them in so we can test. Got to so far. So everything's in there. I haven't got the smoke unit in yet, but it all fits in there pretty well. Right, it's not 100% sitting down, but good enough to do the first test. And so I'll just put that on the track now. Okay, well, I've just put it on my 2-foot test track, and I'm running with the NCE DCC system. I have tested this with Decoder Pro on the test track mode, so I know there's no shorts or anything, and it is working. But when I first put it on with Decoder Pro, I haven't updated any CVs except the address, and it's all standard sound project as downloaded, so I'll be working on that later, but it's just the standard sound file for the V36 as standard. So connect the track, the cab light comes on straight away, so that's the way it's set up in the standard with I think that's aux 7, so I think, so that comes on. But that's fine. And we put on F1. It's the sound. straight up. So it's all pretty good. So when you rev up, that sound changes, and you see we've got successful motion as well from the motor block. And we've got the headlight on. Quite a high momentum setting is standard, so I'm going to adjust that. Change direction, the rear headlights on. So it's looking good. That's one horn. That's the other one. So that's all the features there that I've done so far. So keep progressing with the lights. Okay, well the next stage is I've done some work putting the little ditch lights on, like the side lights. So I've cut holes here and put some narrow plastic tube in there through the holes, and I can put lights in there, LED globes, so one on each side, and that shines out underneath that foot rail. And I've done the same in the back of the cab. So again, cut through there. So the LEDs look like this. The ones I'm using are from DCC Concepts in the UK, and they are they're LEDs which are two colours. So these are red or white, and which is unusual, and the white is quite a yellow colour, so it gives an old-fashioned look. They come with a set of 1K resistors, which I've put on. So I'll just show you the wiring up from the LEDs at the rear, ready to go in. So each LED's got 3 leads. The centre one is the common, which is the positive, so that's got a blue wire, and the white I've got put purple, as distinct from the red, which is on the red lead, and on the other side I've got red, blue and green. So the green and the purple both go right up to the decoder, so I can control the left and the right white lights with separate wires, but the red will both be on together. Now I've got the resistor. There's a resistor in the positive lead on that side, and one in the positive lead on that side. So you can have them in the negative lead, but then you need 4 instead of 2. So you could put one in the blue wire down here before it divides and just have one resistor, but I've got one on each side. So that comes through. So I've got 9-volt globe, so I can test. So the red comes on, both comes on, and the green lead, I've got the white on that side, and purple is the white on the other side. So that way I've got 4 wires going to the 2 ditch lights at the back, and I'll have another 4 for the ditch lights at the front. For those I'll use 4 aux points, aux 1 through 4, to connect the different coloured lights, not counting the blue common. And I should be able to have either the red or the white on the front or the back, and I can also have the white flashing on the front and back at the same time. So that's the idea. So I'll put these in here and see how it goes. I'll show you how the wiring's going so far. So this is the bottom of the cab. So they're the rear headlight and the cab light. These are the wires coming in from the LED ditch lights, all the different colours. So there's one red for the 2 red lights, green and purple for the white, blue for the common. And so they all run up to the to this 8-pin plug, little 8-pin plug. I'm only using 7 wires at the moment, but I'm sure I'll find a use for the next one. So they go on there, so I can take the cab off and work on it if I need. So cab just goes back into position like that, and the wires will come out. They come out the front. So the surrounds on the new lights, I'm going to paint them blue once everything's done. And another thing, another trap, the headlight, the cab light and the rear headlight, which are original, LGB original. I didn't check the voltage on those, and because I disconnected them from the little circuit board, and I found that I connected them up with track power like normal, and of course they blew. The other 2 locomotives I've got had 18-volt globes, older style, and being a bit older than this one had 5 volts, so they blew. So I've replaced them with 12-volt incandescent globes. They just give a little bit nicer light, the incandescents, than LEDs. And so they're 12 volts, so with a small resistor, this should be working. So let's put it on the track and see how it goes. We'll just see what's happening now. So we go forwards, headlights on now, they're good enough. I can adjust the brightness a little bit. Ditch lights are a bit too bright. And then reverse, and just got the red, and the headlight goes out, and the rear headlight and the white lights come on at the rear. So in that configuration, the rear lights are red. So the flashing function, I can go, for example, shunt mode, and the lights flash. So that's just by having the grade crossing feature ticked on the lights, ditch light type 1, and then when I turn grade crossing on, I get the flashing. So turn that off and change direction, and the shunt mode. So in reverse, I've got the flashing but just not alternating, because that saves another function, two functions. Not functions, auxiliary outputs. So that's looking good. Change direction, shutting off, and I've also got the flashing set up with the bell. So it's all pretty good now. There's a few things I haven't done. I haven't put the smoke in yet, or the servos for the couplings, or the driver and co-driver to change direction. But I'll do that in a later video. But I've got all the functions set up, so that's the next project. Anyway, hopefully that's been interesting and useful, and shoot me some questions if you want, an email, and